So is my presentation visible to sir?
Yes, sir.
Hello, is my presentation visible to
Yes,
you?
sir. Yes, sir. Perfect.
Thank you. So yeah, so here I'll be talking about pool boiling in electronics cooling, and these are my current research areas. So mainly we are working with the pool boiling heat transfer enhancement techniques, and also some condensation heat transfer using laser textured surfaces. So we are using these laser processing technique to create some patterns on metal surfaces, and these patterns can enhance both boiling heat transfer as well as condensation heat transfer. Now, when this pool boiling heat transfer is employed for electronics cooling, it's called immersion cooling technique. So these are some of my areas where I have done my work and I'm continuing my work. Now, in this talk, I'll be explaining a bit about electronics cooling and the basic principles of immersion cooling, and then the basics involved in pool boiling heat transfer and the mechanisms involved in it and how to enhance the parameters involved in pool boiling. So let us go to electronics cooling. So the main reason for the electronics cooling is this Moore's law. So I think this is a basic law which defines the variation of the number of chips in a transistor with time. So generally, according to this law, it's just a doubling law. But now the situation with the kind of improvement and development, the condition is going more than more, and not only more than more, it's going beyond more. That means the density of this transistor on or the number of processing units in a given space in a given area is multiplying at a very faster rate, and when this is increasing with the processing speed, the amount of heat generation is also increasing. So thus comes your challenge that the more the speed, the more the processing capability, the more the heat generated. So here the challenge is you cannot operate any electronic system above a safety limit. So that if we take with respect to the temperature, it can be around maximum 85 degrees Celsius, but generally it should be a way below than that. So that's why the situation is more than more now or beyond more. That means the Moore's law is no more valid. That's why you have to design systems with thermal management capabilities of higher capability. Now, the only rescue here is electronics cooling. So you have a lot of heat generation in electronic systems. Then comes the electronics cooling technique. How will you cool? There are many ways by which you can cool, like air cooling or water cooling, liquid cooling or air cooling, or indirect cooling. So in this, I have given some examples like natural convection cooling using air or forced convection. Then comes liquid direct of immersion, that is single phase. If it is two phase, it's called boiling. Then you do the forced circulation of water with boiling, that is called flow boiling. And you can use heat pipe. About this heat pipe, you will be learning in more detail tomorrow. Now, when you are employing any cooling technique, of course it will take some energy input. So it has been calculated that the energy which is required for this cooling of electronics is very high. So why are we worried? It's only the cooling or the amount of energy which is required for cooling along with the carbon emission, because you need power for employing the cooling techniques, and the power will indirectly come from the fossil fuels. So that's why the direct relation will give you this, that if it comes roughly 3% of the globally generated power, so that's a very huge value. And now this percentage is increased because now lot of IT companies and lot of data servers are coming, so you need higher capacities of coolings, and lot of rack system based coolings are coming now, and that's why the energy requirement and thus the carbon emissions is very high. That's why this topic is of great importance. Actually, this topic doesn't come out in light, but it is of great importance, and that's why many research works are going on involving this electronics cooling at different scale. So you should not think that this electronics cooling is just only the heat sink which is available in the computer, because the computing systems are available at different levels and different capabilities. capacities. So when you are using any data centers, the power generated or the heat generated will be too high, and you cannot handle it using simple air cooling techniques. That's why you need very highly efficient techniques like liquid cooling. Now here a general view of the data centers, how much power is consumed, and how much money is required for employing these kind of cooling systems. Now, these are the different kinds of electronics cooling, just the pictorial representation. As I explained you already, in if you take air cooling, it can be passive or active. Passive just in terms of fans, and active if you have any external fan, it is active air cooling. If you take liquid cooling, it can be direct or indirect. If it is direct, it's called immersion cooling. So what is it basically? You have a electronic chip system or an electronic assembly which you directly just immerse into the liquid, and this liquid can be water or any other suitable liquid. So this is called direct liquid cooling. And if you take indirect liquid cooling, it is something like thermosiphons or heat pipes, and which I have shown. Apart from this, we also have PCM based electronics cooling. Now again, the selection of these types depends on the amount of heat generated or the requirement of the area where you want to employ. So the selection depends on those factors. If you specifically take liquid cooling, it can be direct or indirect. Indirect, where the liquid does not comes in contact directly with the heatsink. Oh, so the removal will be through indirect method, just through conduction of a plate, cold plate, where the liquid will be circulated to that plate. But in direct cooling, it should be immersion. Now, even in the case of direct cooling, it can be single phase or two phase. If there is no boiling occurring, if there is no phase change, it's called single phase. But if the temperature is very high and the boiling point of the fluid is very low, in that case, boiling comes into act, and it will result into two-phase direct cooling. Now, the advantages or the characteristics of air-based cooling and liquid-based cooling. So here you can see that in case of air circulation, the performance is always low, and the circulation is uneven. Installation costs are very large. You need very specific floorings, and the rooms, it's not only the main servers where you need fans, but all the other areas where you need a lot of fans to remove these heat. And it's going to be a very noisy environment. The sound which is generated because of these fans are going to be very large. But if you take liquid immersion, there are many advantages. There are no sounds, there are no moving items if it is immersion cooling, pool boiling based, and you don't need any special floorings and all for this condition. That's why this liquid immersion cooling has a lot of advantages associated with this as compared to this air based cooling. Now, if you take the different commercial establishment which are already using this kind of immersion cooling, you see the electricity cost. So if you compare the air cooling and this immersion cooling, the electricity cost is very less. That means the power required for operating these immersion cooling systems are very less as compared to the even air cooling systems. And also the space. So if you take the case of air cooling, each rack requires a separate fan. But if you take the case of liquid immersion cooling, the space requirement is very less as compared to this air cooling techniques. So here the report is less than 70%, 75% less space is required, and that's huge. So the basic components here, so you can see the basic illustration of this immersion cooling. So you have a fluid which is contained in a chamber, and it can be direct or indirect also, again in this case. So the boiling fluid will be boiling, right? So in order to maintain the temperature, you have to cool the liquid, and that liquid cooling can be done internally or externally. So this circuit is to cool the boiling fluid or to maintain the pressure inside by cooling the vapor which is being generated out of the heating. So it can be done internally as well as externally. Now the main working principle here is pool boiling. So you can see that the liquid is there. So once the temperature in the heat sink goes beyond the boiling point of the fluid, boiling starts to occur. So once the boiling starts to occur, you know that the heat transfer coefficient associated with this boiling heat transfer or the phase change heat transfer is very high, and that's why huge amount of heat can be removed from these kind of surfaces. Mm, that's the main advantage when we are employing any phase change based immersion cooling technique. So here generally the boiling occurs and the evaporated fluid will be condensed internally. So in here you can see that the vapor is condensed internally, and the condensed liquid again falls into the tank, and there is no loss of liquid in this case. So you need only a fixed amount of liquid which is employed, and you don't need frequent replacement of liquids. In case of flow boiling, you need a big flow line as compared to this, where a lot of liquid has to be pumped, and it has to be continuous. Here there are no active way of pumping the liquid. Everything is passive. So it's just a boiling and evaporation, condensation back. So here the control of pressure and temperature here you need is very less as compared to other systems. Now there are many companies which are already employing this immersion cooling, and which are involved with the fabrication of systems for this immersion cooling. And I have given some important companies, and 3M is involved with the liquid engineering of these fluids, because you cannot use water. It's an electronics cooling, and you cannot use water because it's highly conductive, electrically conductive. So you need specially engineered fluids. They are generally called dielectric fluids. So 3M is mainly involved in the engineering of these fluids, and many other companies are working on other aspects of the company. There's a summer immersion cooling. This is the company which has done a lot of work in this aspect. If anyone is interested in knowing about these companies, please visit their website and have a look at it. Now these are some of the images of this immersion cooling in act. So you can see there are many articles which are already being published, and even now a lot of articles are coming involving this immersion cooling technique. Now there are many fluids which can be used, but see here I have seen if you want to use the forced convection, you can use certain liquids only. So here it's based on the heat flux that you want to remove, and the kind of fluids you have to use. So the fluid can be air, it can be oil, or it can be any other fluid depending upon their heat removal capacity, the heat transfer coefficient it can result in. So based on the heat flux generated, the heat generated from the system, you can accordingly select the fluid. Now here this is the fluid which we have worked in past using fluorocarbon 72. So it's a dielectric, a special dielectric which was given by the company 3M, and you can see the thermoelectric properties and general physical properties of this fluid. Now here we are comparing it with water. So the main problem associated with this is, see, water is the best thermo fluid, best fluid which can be used for this heat transfer purpose. And if you want to improve the properties of water, you can add any nanoparticle or any other extra fluid to improve the properties of water. But water is an excellent heat transfer fluid, but you cannot use it in this immersion cooling because it is electrically conductive. So in that case you have to use this dielectric fluids, but the main issue associated with this is thermochemical properties or thermomechanical properties associated with this dielectric fluids are very poor as compared to water. You can see the specific heat of water is greater than 4000, this 4220, but in case of FC72 it is 4 times lesser. As well as the latent heat of vaporization, you can see it's very less as compared to water. Water is greater than 2000, but it is less than 100. And the thermal conductivity, you can see it's 0.68, but for FC72 it is very less. So the thermomechanical properties or thermochemical properties of these fluids are very poor, as compared to the best fluid, that is water. That's why we need to do something more to improve the performance of the system. But why these fluids are used? Because you see, as compare the dielectric properties, the electrical properties, it's very good as compared to the strength is very good as compared to water. That means it is not conducting, it is not electrically conducting, and it is highly stable in electrical conditions, and that's why we have to use these kind of special fluids for immersion cooling application. Now, what is the main driving mechanism in immersion cooling? It's pool boiling heat transfer. So what is pool boiling? Where the water is like a pool, like a swimming pool. The water is not moving, but it is stagnant in a given area. So when it is, the water is stagnant and it is not moving, and the phase change process of liquid to vapor state occurs, it's called pool boiling. Now, how it is different than evaporation? Evaporation is an surface phenomena, but boiling is a bulk phenomena. Boiling will happen at the interface of solid and liquid, and it will take place in the bulk. So the physics associated with this boiling is way ahead complex as compared to vaporization. Vaporization is change of phase state from liquid to vapor again, but it is in the surface only. It will take place always in the surface, like the evaporation of water and the drying of clothes in sun. Everything takes place as a result of evaporation. But in this pool boiling, the phase change occurs in the bulk. Now, there are two kinds of boiling, that is pool boiling and flow boiling. I hope you guys are clear with what is pool boiling and flow boiling. Now, let us go for the classification of pool boiling. Now, mainly we can classify this pool boiling based on the temperature of the surrounding liquid around the surface, the boiling surface. So this boiling, if it's taking place, you should have a surface involved, you should have a boiling fluid involved in a given condition of atmosphere, like pressure and temperature. So let us assume it is atmospheric condition. In that case, if the boiling will occur only if the temperature of the surface is above the saturation temperature, right? But at the same time, what about the temperature of the surrounding fluid? If the temperature of the surrounding fluid is also same as that of the saturation temperature, it's called saturated pool boiling. But practically what happens, it doesn't happen. So the surrounding fluid, the fluid which is very close to the hot surface, will be in saturation condition, but the liquid surrounding it will not be in that high temperature. So the temperature of the surrounding fluid will be lesser as compared to the fluid which is very close to the surface. In that case, it's called subcooled pool boiling, and the pool boiling characteristics changes in these two cases, saturated as well as subcooled. But in laboratory conditions, whenever we are doing boiling experiments, we will consider it as saturated, and we will not only consider it, but we will make it as a saturated by giving an extra heater around the liquid, around the surface. So this extra heater will be used to heat the fluid which is surrounding the surface to make it at a saturated condition. Now, why are we going in pool boiling? As I mentioned you already, the heat transfer coefficient value associated with this boiling is very high as compared to other heat transfer methods or other heat transfer processes, like natural convection with gas or with liquid or forced convection. The heat transfer coefficient, that means the amount of heat that can be removed from a particular surface in a given particular area, is very low as compared to boiling. In the case of boiling or condensation, it involves phase change, and that's why the heat transfer coefficient involved is very high. And that's why people are very much interested in utilizing these two concepts for many applications like boilers or atmospheric water harvesting or condensation or this electronics cooling and many other processes. And especially in this pool boiling based system, there are no moving components, and the associated or the involved components are very less as compared to other techniques. That's why people are very much interested in involving pool boiling for many applications, especially electronics cooling. So here I have given you an schematic explanation of what are the different situations in which this pool boiling can be used. Like you have the nuclear boilers or the normal boilers, and steam generators and many other energy conversion systems involve these boilers and condensers. So apart from that, the special application is immersion cooling of electronics, that is immersion cooling. Now I'll be explaining all the basics related to this pool boiling concept. So initially, the topic was initiated by a scientist called Johann Gottlob Leidenfrost. That's why the concept of Leidenfrost effect is still in effect, where you have a surface with very high temperature, and whenever a droplet falls on that, it initially jumps. So if you see in the hotels of Parota hotel, where they will sprinkle water, initially they will jump, and because the surface is at very high temperature, and when the droplet suddenly encounters the very high surface temperature, a layer will form. This layer will stop the heat transfer from the liquid to the surface, or from the surface to the liquid, and thus it jumps initially, and once it comes into equilibrium, the evaporation takes place. And then Nukiyama took effort, and from there he did a lot of other works, and he derived the pool boiling curve, which is very important for studying all the pool boiling related studies. And he did it using a nichrome ware in saturated condition. And then Drew and Mueller came, which who did lot of developments. So initially Nukiyama just predicted the initial form of the curve, but the full form of the curve was characterized by this Drew and Mueller in 1937 itself. But you can see that from them it's almost 100 years, and lot of research work is going on in that field till now. And till now there are a lot of confusions when you involve this pool boiling concept, because this is a very complex phenomena, and lot of parameters are involved in this. And the simple concept is, the more you understand the bubbles, the more you understand this process. But the understanding of the bubble behavior, the bubble dynamics, is very difficult. So people are using lot of techniques for that, but till now lot of confusions occurs, and there is no 100% clarity in that aspect till now. So this is the characteristic boiling curve. So what happens, you take a boiling system in which you have a given surface, a given volume of fluid, and you start giving power to the surface, and the temperature of the surface goes on increasing. Along with that, the temperature of the fluid also goes on increasing. Now once the surface, and we are assuming it as a saturated condition, that means the surrounding liquid is also at the same temperature as that of the surface. Once the surface reaches the saturated temperature, or if you take the boiling point of water at saturated 1 atmosphere, it is 100 degrees Celsius. When it reaches, then the boiling starts. But practically it does not happen practically. So because this is the, if you can see, this is the point where it has already reached that boiling point, but the boiling doesn't initiates. So we can see that as it goes on, again increasing the power, the temperature goes on increasing. That means the heat flux increases and the temperature also increases. Now there comes a point when suddenly the first bubble starts to appear, and that point is called boiling incipience, or onset of nucleate boiling. Now this point is very important. Here only the boiling initiates. How the boiling initiates, you have a surface which has a lot of cracks, lot of pores available in it, and in these cracks and pores air will be entrapped. Now when the temperature is increasing, this air will be expanding, it will goes on increases, and it forms a bubble. Now once the bubble forms at any one site, you can see it starts to form in other sites also. So initially it will be only a single bubble, and you can see the bubbles originating from other places also. So initially it will be random bubbles in the surfaces, and that's why it's called isolated bubbles region, where you have bubbles distributed and they will not be interacting with each other. But as you goes on increasing the surface temperature and the heat flux, the frequency of bubbles, and the density of bubbles starts to increase a lot. And when this happens, it forms a slugs or columns of bubbles, where you have lot of bubbles interaction. Initially it will be interacting vertically, you will be see a slugs columns in a single place, but as it goes on, you can see the horizontal interaction also. So now you cannot literally see the surface, you can see only the bubbles starting to appear a lot. That means the frequency of, so once the bubble moves from a particular place, the liquid from sidewise should travel towards the surface and occupy that place so that it will give a new bubble. So that condition should happen. That means it is called replenishment of liquid. So initially the bubble frequency will be less and the liquid replenishment frequency will be more. But as a heat flux increases, the bubble frequency goes on increasing and the liquid replenishment frequency goes on decreases. A point comes where the liquid cannot come and touch the surface at all. That means you have a continuous generation of bubbles. Okay, and the whole surface will be fully covered using these bubbles only. Now what is bubble? It is nothing but vapor. That means now there is no connection between the surface and the liquid, because in between you have a vapor and whose resistance is going to be very very high. So now the heat transfer is stopped between the surface and the bulk liquid. So the heat transfer does not occurs and the temperature value suddenly increases to very high value. Now this is a point which is called critical point. That means if the temperature goes from beyond this, then the temperature from here it will shoot to this value. That means suddenly the temperature will increase to hundreds and thousands of values and your surface will burn or your surface will break. That's why this point is called critical point, and that's why the heat flux corresponding to this critical point is called critical heat flux. That means you cannot operate any system beyond this critical point. That's why this is called critical heat flux or burnout heat flux or burnout point. Now once, but using in research, using some other techniques, you can try to derive the region in between these 2 points, and that's why here you have a transition region where you have a lot of unstable boiling as well as film formation. So that's why this is called transition region. Now once it reaches this point, again as a temperature corresponding to this field is very very high, now radiation comes into act. Once the radiation comes into act, the heat transfer will increase again, and that's why the heat flux also increases along with that. Now here it forms a complete film over a surface, and this film is very stable. That's why the boiling at this situation is called film boiling, and the region between this film boiling and nucleate boiling is called transition boiling. Now you see our main interest area is this nucleate boiling region. Why? Because you can see from this point to this point the temperature rise is very less, but if you compare the point between these two, you can see the heat flux which can be removed is very very high. That means in this nucleate boiling you can remove lot of heat. That means heat flux, the amount of heat flux that can be removed from a given surface is very very high for a minimal increase in temperature. The surface temperature should not be increased above a particular value. At the same time, the heat flux that can be removed should be very very high, and that happens only in this special region, and that's why lot of research work goes on involving only this region. And this region has this transition and film boiling does not have many applications associated with them. There are very specific applications which are associated with them in metallurgy field, like what to say, quenching effects. So we are not interested in this region, we are only interested in this nucleate boiling region. Now this is pictorial representation of all the boiling concepts. So you can see the as I explained, the initial free convection zones. You can see once the bubble initiates here after the boiling incipients, they are just randomly distributed, and this is the initial point of boiling incipients. And here you can see the isolated bubble region where you have a lot of distributed bubbles. After some time they will interact along the vertical direction and they will form a lot of slugs and columns. And once a high heat flux increases, at a higher heat flux, the horizontal interaction also comes into act, and this is the region where CHF comes. Now these are the pictorial representation of transition boiling region and film boiling region. Now, bubble evolution cycle. What do you mean by bubble evolution cycle? The event which is starting from the initiation of a single bubble to their growth of the bubble and the departure of the bubble and the formation of next nuclei of the bubble is called a bubble evolution cycle. So a bubble evolution cycle involves all these events. So that is growth, departure, and the formation of a next bubble. So initially, the bubble, as I explained, this is a cavity which is assumed as a conical cavity. A bubble is generated due to the expansion of the vapor which is entrapped, and during the initial volume expansion, the edges will be pinned to the edges of the cavity. You can see the edges of the bubble is pinned here, but a moment comes when it will go beyond this cavity, and after this, due to the force balance, when the buoyancy force increases, this bubble departs. So that bubble departure event is very, very important. Once the bubble departure happens, a new nuclei forms in the same spot. So in this pool boiling, there are many interactions which are available. You can, because it involves three phases. That is, you have a surface, you have a liquid, and you have the interface, the vapor interface. So the number of interactions involved here is a lot. And if you want to understand this concept fully, you have to understand all these interactions. The definitions. So during my explanation, I explained most of them, like onset of nucleate boiling, which is again similar to boiling incipients. And this boiling incipient depends on many factors, like surface superheat, what is the temperature, and what is the number of active nucleation sites. That means the number of, or the density of pores which is available for the nucleation purpose, and the wettability of this fluid surface combination. So this boiling incipients, or the starting of the boiling, depends on all these factors. This boiling incipients is very, very important in any application. That means it has to be as low as possible. The boiling should take place as early as possible. So your surface designing should be such that if this is delayed, the surface temperature goes on increasing without the proper removal of the heat, because only single phase occurs and you cannot remove lot bigger amount of heat from the surface. That's why the boiling incipient should be as low as possible. Then critical heat flux, I explained, it is a maximum heat flux beyond which any system cannot be operated. So if you take any pool boiling system, the main parameters are critical heat flux, pool boiling incipients, and heat transfer coefficient. This heat transfer coefficient and pool boiling incipients are the performance parameter. So they will tell you how good the system is working. But critical heat flux is a safety parameter. It's not a performance parameter. It's a safety parameter. So any system should have the very, very higher critical heat flux point. The more the critical heat flux point for a particular system, the more safe it is. That's why many research works are going on only for improving this critical heat flux value. Again, the critical heat flux and the heat transfer coefficient, they again depends on lot of parameters like frequency of bubble generation, the diameter of the bubble. It decides the heat transfer coefficient to a very, very larger extent, and the wettability and the bubble nucleation density. All these parameters are very important in deciding this heat transfer coefficient. As I told, the bubble growth and release, they depend on this force balance. Now the buoyancy force and the capillary force. So there are many other forces are there, but the major forces are shown here, and a simple analogy has been explained that initially the bubble will not move because the buoyancy force will be less as compared to the capillary force. The capillary force will try to stick the bubble towards the surface, but the buoyancy force will try to remove or uplift the bubble away from the surface. Now when this buoyancy force increases or becomes larger as compared to this capillary force, the bubble departure takes place. Now critical heat flux, there are many models which are available in explaining the how this critical heat flux takes place or results in. So there are many models. And the heat transfer, how the heat transfer takes place. The simple analogy is, the more the bubble, the more the heat transfer. That's a simple case. Now when the bubble is moving, how the heat transfer takes place, how the heat is being removed from the surface when the bubble is moved. So it takes place at micro scale, macro scale, as well as nano scale. These days nano scale is also, the generation of nano bubbles in the micro layer is also studied. But in textbook you can see only these kind of mechanisms, or the heat transfer mechanisms, like micro layer evaporation, transient conduction, and the pictorial representation you can see here. So when a bubble is moving, it will create a moment in the surrounding liquid. It will create a mixture of fluid. So this mixture of fluid is a major component in the removal of heat, and also some micro and macro convection takes place. And when the bubble is moving, you can see the wake flow. The liquid is attracted toward the surface because of this movement. So all these movement of liquid, bubble, everything plays a role in the heat transfer. And the transient conduction in micro layer, the micro layer concept is very important in this case. Now, you must have read in all these heat transfer books about the pour boiling correlations. So this is a famous Rossnow correlation, which is relating this surface superheat del T with the heat flux that can be removed. Now, why this equation is very complex? Because this heat flux that can be removed from a given surface by maintaining this surface superheat value of delta T depends on many factors. It depends on the factors of the surface. Okay, like the wettability of this. In this equation, wettability is not involved, but it is a very important parameter. And the properties of the fluid, like surface tension, viscosity, and HFG value, and the surrounding conditions also, like temperature, pressure, everything comes into act. And that's why this mechanism is very complex, because you cannot control precisely all these parameters. Now, correlation for measuring the critical heat flux, that is maximum heat flux and the minimum heat flux. Enhancement. What do you mean by enhancement here? So as I told, any pool boiling system will be characterized by three parameters, like that is heat transfer coefficient, boiling incipience, and CHF. So the boiling incipience has to be as low as possible, and CHF and heat transfer has to be as high as possible. So what are the different ways in which you can make it happen? Again, there are active and passive techniques. In active, you can go for forced circulation of fluid inside the pool itself, then, or you can fix a rotating fan or mixture to bring more with a mixture in the liquid, and you can have some surface vibration, which will again remove the bubbles easily. So as I told, the more the bubble, the easier the bubble is removing, the more the heat transfer. So these are the active ways. But passive ways, how can you play? You can modify the surface. Okay, you can modify the fluid which is in application, or you can play with the surrounding systems. You can invert the surface, you can different orientation you can play. And the pressure, you can play with the pressure, you can increase the pressure or you can decrease the pressure, and you can measure what is happening. In some case it may improve. So if the in situation you cannot modify the liquid, you have to modify the surface. So as I explained you already, in case of immersion cooling, when pool boiling is employed, you cannot do anything with the fluid, because the fluid is going to be fixed. You cannot change that fluid. But in that case, you have to play with the surface. You can modify the surface. Why are you modifying the surface? You can modify to increase the nucleation sites, or you can provide increase the surface area, and which will again improve the bubble dynamics. And you are modifying the surface to decrease the surface superheat. So all these factors, to modify these factors, you can modify the surface. And how can you do it? Using micro or nano extended surfaces, like micro fins, nano fins, micro pin fins. You can do some porous structures, like a lot of nano coatings are there, micro coatings are there. You can bring these coatings to improve the porosity or capillarity or wickability. And all these things are just to improve the liquid supply to the surface. And also you can change the wettability. You can change the wettability to super hydrophobic, super hydrophilic, or the heterogeneous surface in which both this can happen, or a surface where you have both microstructures and nanostructures, like hierarchical structures. So all these things you can do to improve the okay. So the research scope in pool boiling. So as I explained in detail, that when you take any pool boiling system, you got a boiling surface, you got a boiling fluid, and you got a bubble which is involved, and you got the other experimental condition. So you can do research in all these parameters. If you take the boiling surface, you can do the research using microchannel, microporous coatings, nano coatings. My PhD is involving these nano coatings, chemical coatings, reentrant cavities, laser textured surfaces, and these days lot of works is taking place using 3D printer structures. But if you want to change the fluid, there are many ways. You can use salt water, seawater, many alcohols, or the mixture of these nanofluids, dielectric fluids, refrigerant, and recently two more fluids came into it, that is self-riveting fluid and ionic fluid. So if anyone in chemistry field or chemical engineering field, they are interested, they are the new field involving self-riveting and ionic fluid, and they are giving very very good result, and the research scope is very high in that case. If anyone is interested, they can try to investigate in these areas. And how, what are the other conditions that you can play with, like the pressure, subcooling effect, orientation, gravity. So because this application, this pool bowling can also be used for the space cooling applications, like the in these satellites and all. If you there are many electronics, and again in there also you need some cooling strategies. In that case, this boiling systems are employed, and many research work is going on involving NASA and MIT of US. So you can just visit their website and see how this kind of systems work in space cooling also. And many works involving is bubble dynamic study. See, many works are already done but involving at lower heat flux. When you can see the bubble individually, you can analyze their behavior very easily. But what happens at higher heat flux? At higher heat flux, lot of bubbles are generated and they are coalescing with each other, so it becomes very difficult to analyze them. If you can generate any code, or if you can come with any program which can, using with which we can study these bubbles very easily, and their behavior, it will be very very good using any image processing technique. Now these are some examples in which different modified surfaces are used. You can see that reentrant cavities, microstructures, nanostructures, nano wires, and porous structures, and different strategies are used to improve this boiling by modifying the surface. And if again, as I explained, this is the modifying the liquid. So if you can change different liquids and you can get different performances. Now I think I'm done with the basics. So time, sir, time is over. Hello, hello, sir. Anyone is there? Can anyone hear me? Hello, sir.
Sir, we have 10 minutes more, sir.
Sir, I think I have done with my basics, but after this, I have only things related to research. So, will it be fine to share my research results here, or basics are fine? Hello, hello. Fine, fine, sir. Fine. So, if anyone has any question, they can please ask me. Sir, I have done actually. Yeah, hello. Sorry for the interruption. I think one question is which is the better cooling method? Um, I think yeah. So better cooling method in which terms you ask? It depends on the situation where you're using. As I told, if it is low heat flux condition, the methods are different. If it is high heat flux condition, the methods are different. So usually this immersion cooling they comes for data centers. So where the heat generation is very high, and you can use these systems only in that situations. But there are many other small scale like heat pipes are there, thermosiphons are there, air cooling is there. Those things you can use for a computer systems or a small scale systems. So it depends on the amount of heat being generated in a given electronics. Is there any other question? Yeah, what is nano extended surfaces? So nano extended surfaces, if um, it can be any structure if any one dimension is in nanoscale, like nanowire. See, in nanowire, the height of the nanowire is in microns, but the diameter is in nanoscale. It varies in 10 nanometers to 200 nanometers. So in that case, it's called nano surfaces. Now, if all these, it can be any coated surface also, or grown surfaces using electrode deposition technique or any other technique. If these extended surfaces have any one dimension nano, they are called nano extended surfaces. Now, the disadvantages of immersion cooling, again, the range of heat which it can manage as compared to the flow boiling at larger scale. It's not the flow boiling at smaller scale. The flow boiling at larger scale it can involve is very less, and your electronics fully it has to be immersed. Now, if your system is not in that case, if the design of the system is not like that, where you cannot immerse your full electronics into that, then you cannot use immersion cooling. So these are the disadvantages in case of immersion cooling. Okay, fine. So they are asking about my research work. I think it can be taken in any other session, or if you want, I think you can please mail me. I will explain in detail. Thanks a lot. So I think here I can finish. Uh, Sir, I think it's fine. It's done from my part.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a
Thank you very much, sir.
Department of Mechanical Engineering, Jodha Engineering College, we extend our sincere thanks to Uday Kumar.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Okay, sir.
Good luck. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
My thanks to the participants for the active participation to win the grand success of the program. Thank you all.
Tomorrow's meeting link will be emailed.
The next day 2, section 1 will start by 11 a.m. tomorrow. The meeting will be shared to the mail. Thank you.